Hey everyone, how is everybody doing today? This is Karen, and I have the immense privilege and pleasure of being your instructor for BIOS 150 or Bio 2 for all of these wonderful bio and environmental science majors. This is our first lecture. Why don't I just go ahead and get started. As far as this course is concerned, this first lecture is going to be about the Tree of Life. It's chapter 26, but it's only the first section, so 26.1 only. And then we're going to cover what we call protists. All right, so as far as this course is concerned, just a brief overview. I know that you did do some of this in your Bio 1 class, and so we're just going to review because I know Bio 1 went into, they talked about this, but that Bio 1 is basically more cellular biology and genetics. What we cover in Bio 2 is or we cover the organisms, like organismal biology it's called, like the whole plant and animal and fungus and protist. And so this is where we are going to begin as far as just reviewing here. Okay, you know all about just looking at the world around you, or even maybe swabbing the sole of your shoe, that there are millions of species of living things that live on our planet. It's really, really totally cool. I mean, everything from blue whales to bacteria to your pet cat or dog, the birds that you're hearing in the background. There are so many living things. It is really extremely cool, which I know is quite an understatement. And so how do we, as biologists or even environmental scientists or environmental biologists, like how do we get a handle on categorizing all of the living things on our planet? Well, of course, we're not the first ones to think about this. This has been thought of for hundreds of years. And those people who attempted this before us had a pretty good handle on how to go about this query. And they pretty much grouped those living things according to like characteristics. And please keep in mind, this is long before genetic testing and DNA analysis. So what they did actually is kind of what we stick to today. We have a hierarchical classification system, and it's how we organize all living things based on, well, like characteristics as well as evolutionary heritage. And it goes from the most inclusive to the least inclusive. Like you see on the right-hand side, life, that's the top of the right-hand side. It's everything that's considered life. We break that down into 3 domains, and those are, actually, that's the next slide. Okay, so anyway, so we have life, then we have 3 domains. They are separated on like characteristics, which we'll get to in the next slide. Then each of those domains is divided into kingdoms. Each kingdom is divided into phyla or phylum. Each phylum is divided into class. Each class is divided into what we call orders. Each order is divided into different families. Each family is divided into different genera or genus. Genera is plural. And then finally, species. And as you can see underneath on the left-hand side, for instance, like we have human in the domain eukaryota or eukarya, which is what the chimpanzee and the wolf and the tiger snake and the monarch butterfly, they're all in the same domain, which we'll get to in a bit, as far as why they're all in the same domain. And it looks like these are all in the kingdom Animalia. They're all animals. All except for the monarch butterfly. Now here's where we see some differences. So humans, chimps, gray wolves, and tiger snakes are all in the same phylum, Chordata. They have a central nervous cord. Except monarch butterflies, there we go. There's where they diverge. They are arthropoda. We move a little bit further down, and those phyla are divided into classes. And we see that humans, chimps, and gray wolves are in the class Mammalia because they all have common traits. except tiger snakes do not share those traits, and so they are in a different class. That's reptilia. You know, mammals have fur and give birth. Well, not all mammals give birth to live young. There are a few exceptions, but they do nurse their young, whereas reptiles do not, and that's where the divergence is. When we get to the order, humans and chimps are in the same order, whereas gray wolves, they diverge into carnivora. Chimps and humans are in the same family, that is Hominidae, whereas, and then we go further down, humans and chimpanzees are in different genera or genuses, which is improper to say, but genera, where that's where they diverge. So we have 3 domains as far as categorizing these millions of species. Bacteria, these are made up of prokaryotic cells. Archaea are also prokaryotic celled living things, but they're more what we call extremophiles. And then there's eukarya, and these are all the living things that are made up of the type of cell called a eukaryote, which I know you covered these in Bio 1. And for our course, we are going to focus on those 4 kingdoms in eukarya. Bacteria, you covered, kind of touched on that in Bio 107, and also we have the microbiology course that some of you will opt to take depending on which track you are on for what you plan to do for your 4-year degree or for your career. And so that's where you would cover that in more detail as well as archaea. So as far as the kingdoms that we'll be covering in domain eukarya, there are the kingdoms fungi, plantae, animalia, and protista, which your book has it, but there's all sorts of issues in regards to protista, whether it's a true kingdom or whether it's just a grouping. So, but we will get to that because it's the first one we are going to cover. As far as an overview, if you are in the kingdom plantae, you are autotrophic. That is, you make your own food through photosynthesis. Your cells have cell walls. You are multicellular, however. If you embody those characteristics, but you're only 1 cell big, you happen to then be in a different kingdom. As far as fungi is concerned, you are made up, once again, of course, of eukaryotic cells. You are multicellular, but I actually see a mistake on this slide because you can have single-celled fungi. Oh dear, the yeasts. Okay, make a note of that. You're heterotrophic in the way that you actually absorb your nutrition. You don't ingest or digest, but you absorb. These are the decomposers. You may have heard of mushrooms and moles, etc. And then there's kingdom Animalia. These are multicellular. If you are only made up of 1 cell, you are not in the kingdom Animalia. You are heterotrophic. You ingest and digest your nutrition, and you actually have no cell wall. That's why animals are soft and squishy, but plants, having that cell wall makes them crunchy. And of course, animals, you, birds, crabs, spiders, insects, etc. Now, another part of our introduction here, which I know you covered in Bio 1, but we'll go over again because this will get more and more important as you go throughout your academic career and probably your professional career as well. And that is that with all the millions of species that we know of, they all have names. And you may have heard of a lot of these names, like, oh my gosh, look at it's a wood turtle, it's a blue jay, it's a robin. But we are scientists, of course, and we are in college. So we refer to these species by their binomial names or their scientific names. And these scientific names are made up of, you recall the hierarchy of living things, the last two least exclusive, the genus and the species. And they are, they're organized in a very specific way. I should say they're represented in a very specific way. they are either underlined, the scientific names, or they are italicized. Now, you don't see them underlined so much anymore. This is way back in the dark ages before computers, when typewriters really didn't have the ability to do italics, but they could underline really well. So mostly you're going to see this in italics, but also the genus, the first of the two of the scientific name series, is capitalized, and the species is a lower case letter. So, like for instance, or the other reasons for these, the binomial nomenclature, is that it does reflect evolutionary heritage. Like, for instance, you see the lower right, like the genus or the scientific name of a horse is Equus caballus. The scientific name for a zebra is Equus burchelli. And so they both are in the same genus. So we know that they are evolutionarily related very closely. But it's the species name, the second word, that tells us that they are in fact separate species. As far as other reasons we use these names are universal. And so you would, the Equus caballus is actually, regardless of whatever your first language is, or even your second or third language, the horse is always, like, you could tell someone who doesn't speak your language, you could say Equus caballus, and you both know you're talking about a horse. But if you just said horse to that person, they may not know what that is in their own language. And it avoids ambiguity in identifying species. For instance, like what I know of, these big funky brown hamsters, I call, that are running around our woods here in Pennsylvania. Like, I call them groundhogs, but other names for them, colloquialisms, are like, you can call it a woodchuck, a whistle pig, a land beaver, or a marmot. It's all the same animal. But Marmota monax, that is the universal name for that particular thing, which I'm just going to call a groundhog. So that's very, very important. And, I hate to say this. I don't know how to say it without sounding kind of pretentious, but just as a heads up, you only do like freshman and sophomore year here at NAC. And when you get to your junior and senior year is when you'll start to take your upper level courses where you're specialized. Like, you will have a course only in like mammalogy, where it's just all mammals, or you'll have a herpetology course where it's just reptiles and amphibians, or you'll have a course in ornithology, which is only birds, which is like totally cool, because if you're into that, you just have a whole semester talking about the thing that you love most. And when you get to the third and fourth levels and you take these more specialized courses, your professors are pretty much going to not use common names whatsoever, and you will be beholden to know the Latin names, or I'm sorry, the scientific names, it's also called Latin names, of these particular, of these different species. I'm just giving you the heads up. When that time comes, you'll be like, oh yeah, Karen said that we're gonna have to know these. Yeah, that's part of it. And you almost, it's like a sign of a rite of passage, if you're at a conference and you're talking to your colleagues, and if you use a common name, it's almost kind of looked upon like, whoa, hey, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. We only talk about, Glyptomys sculpta. You don't say, oh yeah, I saw this really cool wood turtle the other day. So I guess it sounds kind of pretentious, but that's just, that's your academic career to come. All right, well, we will start off with protists, but I'm going to stop this video now in order just to kind of break this up in kind of manageable chunks. So, okay, I hope this was useful, and I'll see you for the next lecture. Bye.